Welcome, wanderer of myths and minds, to Sleep of the Gods. Tonight, let us journey to the heart of Olympus once again, this time guided not by the tempests of Poseidon, nor the shadows of Hades, but by the brilliance of intellect itself. This is the story of Athena, the goddess of wisdom, strategy, and righteous war, born not from mortal womb nor divine embrace, but from thought, from pain, from the very mind of Zeus. In her story, we find not thunder or vengeance, but clarity and balance, a divine embodiment of reason standing among gods driven by impulse. We'll explore the birth that split the sky, the rivalry with Poseidon for Athens, and the wisdom that shaped heroes like Odysseus and Perseus. We'll step quietly through her temples, into the hum of ancient prayers, and feel how her calm mind guided Greece through chaos and creation alike. So settle in, let your thoughts slow, let the night soften, and allow the tale of Athena to unfold before you. If you enjoy these quiet journeys through myth and time, remember to subscribe and leave a like. It helps the story reach other dreamers like you. Now, let us begin. Before there was Athena, there was a dream of foresight and of fear, born within Zeus himself. The king of the gods had taken Metis, the goddess of cunning intelligence, as his consort. She was the sharpest mind of all the Titans, her wisdom so vast it frightened even Zeus. For prophecy whispered that Metis would bear 2 children. The first, a daughter of unmatched power. The second, a son who would overthrow his father, just as Zeus had done to Cronus. Zeus, ever haunted by the cycles of rebellion that plagued his line, resolved to end the prophecy before it could take shape. When Metis conceived, he deceived her, speaking words of affection while plotting to consume her. And so, in one swift act of divine paranoia, Zeus swallowed Metis whole, believing he had ended her destiny and absorbed her wisdom for himself. But the mind of Metis did not die within him. It lived on, whispering, thinking, shaping. Within the thunderous chambers of Zeus's skull, a new form began to stir. Days turned to weeks, weeks into unbearable pain. The god of gods was tormented by visions and voices, a brilliance burning from within. He roared to the heavens, clutching his head, until no god dared approach him. Then came Hephaestus, the god of craft and forge. With calm resolve, he took his hammer and split open Zeus's forehead, and from that divine wound burst Athena, fully grown, adorned in armor, her spear gleaming, her eyes clear and radiant. The world, the other gods, watched in awe as she stood before them, serene yet powerful, her presence balanced between intellect and might. No chaos, no scream of birth, only the quiet hum of wisdom newly born. Zeus, struck by her composure and perfection, named her his favorite child. And in that instant, the prophecy was broken. For Athena was not his downfall, but his reflection, the part of him that thought before it struck, that reasoned before it ruled. Her birth was unlike any other in Greek myth. No mother's cry, no child's weakness, only the fusion of thought and lightning, of knowledge and divine fire. And so began Athena's reign as the goddess of wisdom, her very being a symbol that intellect can emerge even from fear, that clarity can be born from turmoil. She was the mind within thunder, the calm inside chaos. Athena's essence was unlike any of the gods who ruled Olympus. She was not born from love, nor vengeance, nor the chaos that fueled so many divine tales. She was born from thought itself, from the moment where wisdom met will and power met restraint. From her earliest days, she was drawn to both the quill and the spear. In her hands, wisdom and warfare were not enemies, but siblings. She embodied the strategy that precedes victory, the calm analysis before the storm. To her, war was never about bloodshed or conquest. It was about balance, justice, and the preservation of order. Where Ares charged into battle with fury and noise, Athena planned her every strike with precision. He was chaos, she was control. Ares represented the raw emotion of war, the rage, the heat, the blood. Athena represented its intellect, the silent study of advantage, the art of outmaneuvering before striking. And so, while both gods were patrons of battle, the Greeks revered Athena far more. They saw in her not destruction, but discipline, not violence, but victory earned through reason. In cities across Greece, she was called upon before wars began, not during them. Commanders prayed to her for clarity, for courage that could think, for minds sharp enough to turn tides. And when the battles ended, her temples would fill with offerings of olive branches and bronze helm symbols of peace, reclaimed through wisdom. Athena's wisdom extended beyond the battlefield. She was the protector of artisans, of those who shaped beauty through intellect and craft. Weavers, sculptors, and poets all found in her an unseen hand guiding their creations. It was said that even the act of weaving a tapestry was sacred to her, each thread representing the quiet intertwining of order and imagination. Her emblem, the owl, came to symbolize that same duality, eyes open in the night, watching what others overlooked. The owl does not fight the darkness, it sees within it. So too did Athena move through the shadows of human decision and conflict, discerning what was just and what was not. Her sacred plant, the olive tree, spoke of peace and sustenance, a living symbol of her power to turn destruction into life. Legend tells that when Athena competed with Poseidon for the patronage of a new city, she offered the olive tree as her gift, while Poseidon struck the ground and summoned a stream of salt water. The people chose Athena's gift, a gift that could feed, heal, and bring light. And from that moment, the city bore her name, Athens, the heart of Greece, the cradle of philosophy, democracy, and art. From her temple, the Parthenon, her gaze seemed to rest over all of civilization, stern but nurturing. Within its marble walls, she was not merely worshipped, she was studied, contemplated, revered as the symbol of what humanity could become when guided by intellect rather than impulse. She walked among heroes, whispering counsel in their darkest hours. She guided Perseus against Medusa, Odysseus through his endless voyage, and Heracles through his labors. Yet she never fought for glory. Her strength lay in guidance, in the ability to empower mortals to think, to endure, to see beyond the immediate struggle. She was the quiet voice in the mind before a choice is made, the one asking, is this just? Is this wise? And in that question lay her divine power. In her, reason found its protector, And in her temples, carved from stone and light, the Greeks found a mirror of their highest ideal, the unity of wisdom and strength. Among all the gods who shaped the destinies of mortals, none guided as many heroes as Athena. Her wisdom, unlike Zeus's thunder or Poseidon's waves, did not strike it whispered. It waited, and those who listened found themselves shaped into legends. The first of these was Perseus, son of Zeus and Danae. When Perseus was sent on what should have been a death mission to slay the Gorgon Medusa, Athena watched. Medusa, once a maiden in her own temple, had been transformed into a monster for breaking sacred vows. Her hair was a nest of serpents. Her gaze turned any man to stone. It was a tragedy Athena never spoke of aloud, but she remembered. Perhaps that is why she took pity on Perseus, not to avenge Medusa, but to ensure her death would serve a greater lesson. Athena appeared before Perseus with the calm clarity of moonlight. She offered him a polished shield, one so reflective it could serve as a mirror. With it, he could approach Medusa without meeting her eyes directly. It was not brute strength she gave him. It was foresight, the wisdom to fight indirectly. Athena's aid was not a gift of magic, but of mind. She reminded Perseus that even against monsters, intellect was a weapon. When Perseus later beheaded Medusa and lifted her head skyward, Athena took the creature's image and set it upon her aegis, her divine breastplate. The face of terror became a shield of protection, a paradox only she could create. The Gorgon, whose gaze once destroyed, would now defend. Through Athena, even monstrosity was given meaning. She watched over Perseus long after his victory, as he rescued Andromeda, as he carved his name into the songs of men. But Athena never claimed his triumph. Her role was silent, guiding, subtle, as if to say that true wisdom never demands recognition, only results. And then came Heracles, the strongest of all mortals, but a man cursed by fate. Born of Zeus and a mortal woman, Heracles' life was defined by Hera's hatred. In his madness, he committed acts that would haunt him forever. To atone, he was condemned to perform 12 impossible labors. Where others saw brute force, Athena saw potential, an unpolished soul capable of greatness, if only guided. She appeared to Heracles not in grandeur, but in quiet companionship. In many tales, she is seen standing beside him as he carries out his tasks. When he faced the Nemean lion, whose hide could not be pierced, Athena advised him to use his own strength in cunning ways, to strangle the beast and later wear its skin as armor. When he sought to capture the Ceryneian hind, sacred to Artemis, she tempered his haste, urging him to act with reverence. When he cleaned the Augean stables, she inspired the use of nature itself, diverting rivers to wash away the filth. Her presence turned raw strength into heroism. Without her, Heracles would have remained only a warrior. With her, he became a symbol of perseverance, guided by intelligence. Even when the gods abandoned him, Athena stood nearby. She knew that redemption is not a divine gift. It is earned, painfully, through understanding and endurance. In Heracles, she found the embodiment of her philosophy. Power should serve wisdom, not the other way around. And through him, mortals learned that even the mightiest hands need a thinking mind to guide them. Athena's bond with these heroes was not motherly, nor romantic. It was mentorship of the soul. She saw in them what mortals rarely see in themselves: the capacity to rise above instinct, to reason even in the face of chaos. And so, as Perseus lifted his mirrored shield and Heracles bore the weight of the world on his shoulders, Athena's unseen hand was there. She was not the flame, but the spark, not the battle cry, but the breath before it. If Perseus was the reflection of cunning, and Heracles the proof that strength could be tempered by wisdom, then Odysseus was the very embodiment of Athena's spirit in human form. No other mortal mind mirrored hers so closely. His wit, his adaptability, his patience, these were not gifts of brute force, but the refined edge of thought sharpened over time. And it was for that reason that Athena favored him above all others. From the moment the Trojan War ended, their bond became legend. The war had been won not by Achilles' rage or Agamemnon's command, but by a trick of intellect. The Trojan horse, a deception so daring it changed warfare forever. Though mortals told the tale as Odysseus' own brilliance, it was Athena who had inspired it. Her voice was the whisper in his ear that said, "When strength fails, thought must prevail." The Greeks had angered the gods, and Odysseus' journey home became a trial through every temptation and terror imaginable. Through storms and shipwrecks, through the call of sirens and the wrath of Poseidon, Athena never left his side. When he drifted alone on the sea, clinging to wood and hope, she shielded him from the waves. When he stood disguised in Ithaca, plotting the reclaiming of his throne, she sharpened his resolve and veiled his true form. Odysseus was, in many ways, her mortal reflection, the human face of divine intellect. Where other heroes fought their enemies, he studied them. Where others charged, he planned. He was proof that Athena's wisdom had found a true vessel among humankind. And yet, Odysseus' tale also revealed something deeper about Athena herself. She did not simply watch him as a chess piece upon a divine board. She admired him, not for power or beauty, but for the relentless fire of thought that would not die even when all hope was gone. In his trials, she saw humanity's greatest strength, the ability to think, to adapt, to endure. But Odysseus was not the only mortal who carried her light. Another hero, less cunning, yet equally bound to her influence, was Jason, leader of the Argonauts. His quest to retrieve the Golden Fleece was one of cooperation, intellect, and the trust between mortals and gods. When Jason prepared his ship, the Argo, it was Athena who guided its creation. She infused its prow with divine wood that could speak, a living conscience to steer mortals true. She gave the Argonauts not only a vessel but a symbol, a ship that represented the unity of men under reason and purpose. While other gods granted Jason weapons or storms, Athena granted him teamwork. Her wisdom was collective. It flourished when shared. And through that voyage, she proved that human progress was not born of one mind alone, but of many minds working together. Her influence on Jason's crew extended to the smallest details, the way they charted stars, the way they handled the oars, the way they debated strategy before action. She was the unspoken discipline that guided the chaos of adventure. Even when the quest descended into tragedy, Athena's lesson endured, that no matter how divine the aid, mortals must face the consequences of their own decisions. She could grant insight, but not morality. That was the test of humankind. In Odysseus, she found intellect perfected. In Jason, collaboration elevated. In both, She revealed facets of herself that even the gods rarely showed. She was not a patron of blind faith, but of reasoned trust, not of obedience, but of understanding. And perhaps that is why she was called Pallas Athena, not merely a goddess of war and wisdom, but of balance between solitude and society, between the inner voice and the shared word. Athena's relationship with mortals was never one of distance. She was closer than prayer, yet quieter than revelation. Her help was not shouted from Olympus, but spoken in the hush between thoughts, in the moment before a decision, when a mind seeks clarity. To the sailor lost at sea, she was the star that aligned the compass. To the craftsman struggling with his art, she was the idea that turned failure into design. To the warrior trembling before battle, she was the calm that steadied the hand. Through Perseus, Heracles, Odysseus, and Jason, Athena wrote her gospel not in words, but in examples. Each hero a verse in the hymn of human ingenuity, each trial a reflection of her eternal creed, that the mind, when sharpened by virtue, is the truest weapon of all. And though she was divine, her wisdom belonged not to the heavens, but to the mortal soul. For in every choice, in every moment of insight, Athena's spirit quietly endures. When people of the ancient world lifted their eyes toward the high places of their cities, it was often Athena's presence they sought. Her temples were not merely houses of devotion, but monuments to thought itself. To honor her was to honor the capacity of humankind to reason, to build, to dream beyond instinct. Her most famous home stood above the city that bore her name, Athens. The legend of how she won it is one of cunning and competition, the kind of myth that perfectly captures her nature. In the dawn of that city, the gods gathered to decide which of them would become its divine patron. Poseidon, mighty and proud, struck the ground with his trident and summoned a fountain of salt water, a symbol of strength and dominion over the seas. Athena, however, knelt upon the earth and planted a small seed. From it grew an olive tree, its branches green and peaceful, its fruit promising nourishment and trade. The people saw her gift and chose her as their protector. From that act of creation, Athens was born, its name a living tribute to wisdom over power, foresight over impulse. Centuries later, the Athenians would raise a temple worthy of her intellect, the Parthenon. Rising from the Acropolis, it was both fortress and sanctuary, a perfect harmony of mathematics and art. Every column was measured to subtle perfection, each curve calculated to trick the human eye into seeing divine symmetry. Inside stood a colossal statue of the goddess Athena Parthenos, sculpted by Phidias. She was carved in gold and ivory, wearing her crested helmet and bearing the aegis upon her chest. In her hand, she held a smaller figure of Nike, the spirit of victory, as if to say that triumph itself served wisdom. Yet Athena's worship was not confined to grand monuments. Across Greece, in Argos, Sparta, Corinth, and beyond, countless smaller temples and shrines bore her image. In many, she appeared not as the warrior, but as the guardian of cities, Athena Polias, the protector of civic life. Her sanctuaries often stood near gates, crossroads, or libraries, places where people gathered to make decisions. For wherever thought met action, Athena was believed to stand nearby. Her festivals were as much celebrations of reason as they were acts of reverence. The greatest of them was the Panathenaea, held every 4 years in Athens. It was more than a ritual. It was the heartbeat of the city. Citizens marched in procession to the Acropolis, bringing a new peplos, a sacred robe woven by women of the city, to drape upon her ancient wooden statue. There were competitions of music, poetry, and philosophy, where intellect was honored as deeply as physical strength. Even athletic games, dedicated to her, carried the idea that discipline of body must be matched by discipline of mind. But perhaps the most striking aspect of her cult was how quietly it embraced equality. While many gods demanded offerings of blood or lavish sacrifice, Athena's rites often centered around olive oil, honey, and handmade crafts gifts born from effort and skill. She did not require destruction to be honored. She required thought, patience, and work. In a world ruled by storms and war, she was a reminder that creation itself could be sacred. Even in rural sanctuaries, shepherds and farmers would pour a few drops of olive oil on the ground before planting or harvesting. Sailors carved her image on the bows of ships, believing her wisdom would guide them safely to harbor, and artisans whispered her name before striking the first blow of a chisel or drawing the first line of a design. For them, Athena was not distant. She was not a god of unreachable divinity, but a companion of craft and purpose. Her temples were reflections of the human spirit, the architecture of reason made stone. Though Athens bore her name, the reach of Athena's influence stretched far beyond the boundaries of that city. Her worship spread across the Aegean and into the distant colonies of Greece, carried by sailors, scholars, and wandering craftsmen. Wherever Greek culture settled, a fragment of her intellect followed, taking root in new soil and shaping the ideals of each land it touched. In Rhodes, she was revered as Athena Lindia, worshipped in a grand temple that stood upon the cliffs overlooking the sea. There, her statue faced east, welcoming the dawn each day as the light touched the marble steps. Sailors would climb the hill to leave offerings before long voyages, believing that Athena would calm the winds or lend them the wisdom to navigate the unknown. The people of Rhodes saw her not only as a goddess of war and reason, but also as a symbol of clear vision, the ability to see both the path ahead and the dangers hidden within it. In Sparta, her image took on a sterner form. The Spartans honored her as Athena Chalkioikos, the Lady of the Bronze House. Her temple there was simple and austere, its walls lined with bronze plates that glimmered like armor under the sunlight. She was worshipped as a warrior's counselor, a figure of strategy rather than brute might. Spartan women prayed to her for guidance in strength and resolve, and soldiers invoked her name before battle, not for rage, but for discipline and clarity of thought. On the island of Crete, Athena's presence merged with older traditions. Here, she was seen as a protector of artisans and weavers, inheriting traits from ancient Minoan goddesses. Her temples were filled with looms and tools, and priestesses taught the craft as part of sacred ritual. The act of weaving itself became a prayer, a reflection of the cosmos threads crossing and intertwining, just as human fates intertwined under her guidance. In Asia Minor, particularly in cities like Pergamon and Miletus, her worship evolved into more philosophical forms. Scholars and mathematicians considered her their patroness, and her temples doubled as centers of study. The Library of Pergamon, rivaling that of Alexandria, was dedicated to her. In such places, Athena's presence was not only spiritual, it was intellectual. To invoke her name was to affirm the pursuit of understanding as a sacred act. Even beyond Greek lands, her image was adopted and reimagined. When the Romans encountered her, they saw in her the essence of Minerva, their own goddess of intellect and craft. The transformation was seamless. The wisdom that had guided Greek poets and philosophers now inspired Roman engineers and generals. In temples across the Roman world, Minerva's statue stood with spear and shield, a constant reminder that true mastery of the world begins within the mind. But not all worship of Athena was confined to marble temples or public festivals. Many believed she walked invisibly among humankind, watching over acts of creation, innovation, and justice. In homes, small altars were kept for her simple shelves, adorned with olive branches, clay figures, or tools of trade. These quiet spaces carried as much devotion as the grandest sanctuaries, for they reflected her true nature. Wisdom lived, not displayed. Athena's cult endured for centuries because it spoke to something deeply human. Her myths could be grand, but her message was humble. She asked no blind faith, only thoughtfulness. She demanded no fear, only understanding. And in return, she offered clarity, a light that burned not in the sky, but in the human mind. From the bronze temples of Sparta to the olive groves of Attica, from the libraries of Pergamon to the silent homes of farmers and scholars, her presence remained constant. She was the whisper in the workshop, the calm in the council, the stillness before the strike of inspiration. Wherever reason was valued, wherever art was crafted, wherever justice was sought, Athena's unseen hand rested lightly upon the world. No god, however wise, exists without contention. And Athena, for all her reason and composure, was not immune to the frictions of Olympus. Her intelligence, her independence, and her unyielding sense of justice often placed her at odds with other immortals, some who envied her, others who misunderstood her nature entirely. Her conflicts were not born of wrath, but of principle, and each revealed another facet of what it meant to wield wisdom among the divine. The most famous of her rivalries began with her uncle Poseidon, the god of the sea. Both sought to be the patron deity of a flourishing new city upon the Attic coast. To decide who would hold dominion, the gods decreed that each must offer a gift to its people. Poseidon struck the ground with his trident, and from the earth sprang a saltwater spring, a symbol of naval power and conquest. Athena, in turn, offered the olive tree, a gift of peace, sustenance, and endurance. The people chose her gift, and the city took her name, Athens. This contest was not merely about territory. It was a clash of philosophies. Poseidon's gift spoke of might, of glory won through domination. Athena's offered prosperity through harmony and labor. And though Poseidon's pride was wounded, the rivalry between them embodied the eternal struggle between impulse and intellect, the sea's chaos against the calm of cultivated land. Yet her disputes were not limited to Poseidon. There was Ares, god of war, the very embodiment of passion and violence. While Ares reveled in the chaos of battle, Athena preferred strategy and discipline. To her, war was never a sport nor a display of power. It was a matter of necessity, a grim art that demanded intelligence rather than fury. When they fought side by side, her precision outshone his rage. When they stood opposed, her composure made his temper seem childish. Their rivalry came to life most vividly in the Trojan War. Ares fought for the Trojans, his beloved side. While Athena guided the Greeks, she inspired Odysseus and Achilles, whispering cunning and courage into their hearts, while Ares hurled himself into battle with unrestrained fury. In the end, her strategies triumphed, though not without cost. The war left scars upon both gods and mortals, yet it affirmed her way, that intellect, when steady, conquers brute strength. But even among the goddesses, Athena's clarity could provoke discord. Aphrodite, radiant and impulsive, represented the allure of emotion, the pull of love that defied reason. Their tension was subtle, but ever present. One ruled the heart, the other the mind. In the tale of Paris's judgment, this tension reached its breaking point. When Paris was asked to choose the fairest among Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite, each offered him a gift. Athena promised wisdom and victory in war. Hera offered power, and Aphrodite offered the love of the most beautiful woman in the world. Paris chose Aphrodite, and thus the seeds of the Trojan War were sown. Athena's rejection in that fateful contest was not one of vanity, but of principle. She did not beg for admiration, nor manipulate desire. Her beauty was not of the flesh, but of the spirit, and so she could never compete on the terms of passion. Yet, in losing, she revealed the flaw at the heart of mortal judgment, the preference for immediate pleasure over enduring wisdom. Her rivalry with Arachne, however, was of a different kind, one that reflected the thin line between pride and reverence. Arachne was a mortal weaver of exceptional skill who dared to claim her heart surpassed that of Athena herself. When challenged, Arachne's tapestry was flawless, even daring to depict the gods' misdeeds. Though Athena admired the work, she could not abide the mortal's arrogance. Out of both pity and punishment, she transformed Arachne into a spider, condemning her to weave forever. This myth is not merely a warning against hubris, it is also a reflection of Athena's duality. She was a goddess of both compassion and consequence. Her punishments, though harsh, often carried a strange mercy. Arachne was not destroyed, but transformed, allowed to live through her art eternally. Athena, more than any other god, understood that greatness could border on defiance, and that mortals, in their striving, often cross dangerous thresholds. Even her relationship with Zeus held traces of conflict beneath its harmony. She was his favorite child, born from his own mind, embodying his intellect, purified of impulse. Yet in this closeness lay a tension. Zeus, for all his authority, knew that Athena's wisdom sometimes surpassed his own. When he acted rashly, she would counsel restraint. When his justice faltered, she would restore balance. Their bond was one of mutual respect, but also of unspoken rivalry, as the father of gods looked upon the daughter who mirrored his best self without his flaws. Among mortals, too, Athena's justice could be both feared and revered. She was known to intervene in trials and disputes, often siding with fairness over sentiment. Her creation of the Areopagus, the court of Athens, marked one of the earliest divine endorsements of reasoned judgment over vengeance. When Orestes was tried for killing his mother, Athena cast the deciding vote acquitting him, not out of sympathy, but because she believed that justice must serve harmony, not bloodshed. Through all her conflicts, whether divine or mortal, Athena remained consistent. Her wars were not for power, but for balance. Her rivalries were not fueled by hatred, but by the defense of reason. She stood as the eternal reminder that even among gods, wisdom must contend with emotion, impulse, and pride. And in this ceaseless struggle between clarity and chaos, Athena never faltered. She was not the loudest, nor the most feared of Olympus, but she was the most enduring. For when tempests fade and passions cool, it is her voice, the quiet reasoning of the mind, that remains. To the people of ancient Greece, Athena was not a distant deity gazing coldly from Olympus. She was near, as close as the whisper of thought before action, as present as the silent confidence that steadies the hand of a craftsman or the heart of a soldier. She did not rule her devotees through fear, nor demand endless offerings of gold or blood. Instead, she taught them. She guided. She watched. Unlike many gods who delighted in mortal folly, Athena found in humanity a reflection of her own duality, flawed yet capable of reason. She favored mortals who showed intelligence, restraint, and the courage to think before acting. Her interventions were rarely theatrical. She did not send storms or miracles. Rather, she influenced the outcome of events through insight, the spark of an idea, a sudden realization, a whisper of wisdom in a moment of peril. Her relationship with heroes was legendary. Among them, none shone brighter under her guidance than Odysseus, the clever king of Ithaca, master of cunning and endurance, was her favored mortal child. In every trial he faced, from the wrath of Poseidon to the temptations of goddesses, Athena stood as his unseen companion. She admired his intellect, his adaptability, and above all, his refusal to surrender to despair. When Odysseus wandered the seas for 10 long years, it was Athena who pleaded with Zeus to end his suffering. When he returned to Ithaca, disguised as a beggar, it was Athena who veiled him in wisdom and patience, allowing him to reclaim his home not through force, but through strategy. Their bond was unique, neither worshipper and goddess, nor master and servant, but partners in intellect. She, the divine mind, he, its mortal echo. But Odysseus was not the only one to feel her touch. Perseus, slayer of the Gorgon Medusa, owed his victory to Athena's guidance. It was she who gifted him the polished shield, a mirror bright enough to reflect the monster's deadly gaze. Through her counsel, he learned to fight, not with brute force, but with cleverness. In the glint of that bronze mirror, Athena taught all mortals a lesson. That reflection, literal and metaphorical, is often the sharpest weapon of all. Athena also favored the builder and the artisan. Daedalus, the master craftsman who built the labyrinth of Crete, was one of her quiet disciples. To him, she granted the spark of invention and the curse of foresight. His creations dazzled kings, but his mind was restless, always yearning for perfection. In him, Athena's gift revealed its burden, for wisdom once gained cannot be undone. The same intellect that built wonders also led him to defy authority, to challenge the limits of the human condition. And though Daedalus paid dearly for his ambitions, his name became eternal, as did the goddess who inspired him. She guided Heracles too, the mightiest of all mortals, not with raw strength, but with discipline. When his fury blinded him, Athena intervened, reminding him that true heroism lay not in destruction, but in control. She stood beside him as he performed his labors, tempering his impulses with reason. Through Heracles, she proved that even the strongest hand must bow to wisdom, that muscles alone could not lift the weight of destiny. In arts, Athena's influence was everywhere. She was the patron of weaving, a symbol of patience and order. Every thread crossing another was a metaphor for her view of the world, interconnected, deliberate, and enduring. When women of Greece sat at their looms, their fingers moving with rhythmic care, they invoked her name. Their craft was an act of devotion, not through sacrifice, but through creation. In each woven pattern, Athena lived, guiding hands to beauty through discipline. To the philosophers and lawmakers, she was the light of clarity and fairness. In Athens, her city, her spirit, was embedded in the heart of democracy. The Parthenon itself, gleaming under the Athenian sun, was not merely a temple. It was a symbol of reason triumphing over chaos. Citizens invoked her wisdom when debating in the agora, her calm logic echoing in their arguments. She was the quiet guardian of dialogue, ensuring that justice would be shaped not by emotion, but by truth. Athena's presence was also invoked during times of peace, when farmers sowed seeds beneath olive trees, her sacred gift. The olive, in its simplicity, represented everything she valued: usefulness, endurance, and balance. It offered nourishment, oil, wood, and shade. Through this humble tree, Athena whispered her eternal lesson that prosperity comes not from conquest, but from care. Even in tragedy, her hand could be felt. When Orestes stood trial for killing his mother, vengeance demanded his death. Yet Athena, presiding over the newly formed court, listened not to rage but to justice. She cast the deciding vote that set him free, marking the dawn of a new order, one ruled not by revenge, but by reason. It was perhaps her greatest gift to humankind, the idea that law, rather than blood, could guide society. And though her temples fell to ruin, and her statues turned to dust, her influence endured in the way mortals thought, created, and governed. In every invention, in every piece of art, in every act of fairness, her quiet spirit lingered. For Athena was not the goddess of blind worship, but of awakening. Her divinity did not demand submission, it demanded growth. Through mortals, she lived on, in their debates, their creations, their courage to question the world. She remained eternal. And though the age of Olympus faded, her voice became one with the human mind itself. Athena's guidance extended far beyond the battlefield or the council hall. She reached into the hands of mortals, into the quiet corners of workshops, studios, and libraries. Where she walked, creation followed, not merely the creation of objects, but of ideas, structures, and strategies. She was the divine spark behind every act of ingenuity, whether in the weaving of delicate cloth, the shaping of marble into immortal forms, or the careful arrangement of thoughts into laws and philosophies. Among artisans, Athena's influence was profound and pervasive. In every loom in Athens, her presence was felt. Weaving was not merely a practical craft. It was a meditation, a symbolic reflection of life's intricate patterns, each thread intertwined with another, echoing the interconnectedness of fate and thought. A mirror of the cosmos itself, women dedicated to this sacred task would whisper her name softly, seeking not only skill but the wisdom to understand balance, harmony, and order. In the patterns they wove, Athena lived, teaching patience, precision, and the elegance of subtlety. Potters, sculptors, and stone cutters also carried her guidance. The shaping of clay and marble became a ritual of thought and care. Each figure carved or molded in her honor was not just art, but philosophy in 3 dimensions: discipline, proportion, and clarity made manifest. Athena inspired mortals to elevate craft into an intellectual pursuit, to combine skill with reasoning, and to see beauty not as ornamentation alone, but as a reflection of order and understanding. In this, her lessons transcended mere physical creation, shaping the very way humans approached problem-solving and design. She was no less present in the minds of philosophers and scholars. Athena was the unseen counselor behind the first schools of thought, the quiet voice that urged questioning and reflection. In Athens, the city that bore her name, the agora was more than a marketplace. It was a temple of reason. Philosophers and mathematicians drew upon her guidance, whether consciously invoking her or unknowingly channeling the spirit she embodied. Logic, ethics, and strategy were her offerings to humanity, the means by which mortals could approach divinity through thought. The influence of Athena was particularly visible in the stories of those she guided directly. Daedalus, master craftsman of Crete, built labyrinths and wings not merely through inspiration, but under her subtle counsel. She provided insight, allowing him to imagine solutions beyond the ordinary mind. Yet her gift was double-edged. Innovation carries risk, and Daedalus learned the weight of responsibility alongside the joy of creation. Athena taught that intelligence is a sacred power, one that must be wielded with care and foresight. Even in the lives of soldiers and strategists, her impact was profound. Every formation, every strategy, every carefully plotted maneuver bore the echo of her wisdom. The Greeks, in their countless conflicts and campaigns, often credited Athena for victories achieved not through strength alone, but through intellect. Her guidance was quiet, yet decisive. She rewarded careful thought, valor paired with reasoning, and the ability to foresee consequences beyond the immediate moment. Athena's influence also extended into civic life. She was the silent partner of lawmakers, whose principles of justice and deliberation echoed her own ideals. The courts, councils, and assemblies of Athens were infused with her presence, a reminder that reason and fairness should guide human action. By championing intellect over impulse, she elevated the very notion of governance, embedding wisdom into the foundation of society. In private spaces, her influence was subtle but no less real. Small household shrines, olive branches placed upon shelves, or even the careful arrangement of tools and crafts carried her quiet blessing. Mortals who worked with diligence and mindfulness were, in essence, practicing her teachings, cultivating patience, skill, and reason as everyday acts of devotion. Every carefully planned loom, every balanced scale, every inspired idea was a tribute to her enduring presence. The philosophers of later generations reflected upon Athena's guidance, interpreting her as the embodiment of reason itself. They spoke of her as the divine exemplar of intellect triumphing over chaos, of strategy over impulsive action, of foresight over short-sighted desire. In this sense, Athena became timeless, her lessons applicable not only to the people of Greece, but to every culture that valued wisdom, craft, and deliberate thought. Thus, Athena's influence on arts, craft, and philosophy was more than patronage. It was a continuous shaping of the human spirit. She encouraged mortals to reach beyond the ordinary, to combine skill with intellect, to transform labor into creation and thought into insight. In workshops, in courts, in libraries, and in homes, Athena's presence whispered a simple truth. Wisdom is active, creation is sacred, and human potential, guided by reason, is limitless. Through every loom, every chisel, every carefully considered law or strategy, Athena's hand touched the world. And though mortals may not have seen her, they felt her in clarity of thought, in the elegance of design, and in the steady calm of mind that allows creation to flourish. Even as the age of gods and heroes faded into myth, Athena's influence endured. Her lessons did not remain locked in temples or scrolls. They permeated the culture, the art, and the very thought of civilizations that came long after Olympus had grown silent. She became a symbol, not only of war and wisdom, but of the ideal that reason and virtue could guide power itself. In classical art, Athena's presence is unmistakable. Sculptors carved her visage with serene focus, her helmet always poised, her gaze steady. Paintings captured her in mid-stride, shield raised, spear ready, yet with eyes that suggested contemplation rather than rage. The Aegis, often adorned with the head of the Gorgon, became more than a weapon. It was a symbol of protection through insight, a reminder that the sharpest defense is knowledge itself. Philosophers across Greece frequently invoked Athena as a model of virtue. Socrates and Plato wrote of reason as the highest human faculty, reflecting the very essence of what Athena represented: to seek wisdom, to act with careful deliberation, to balance intellect with morality. These were not merely philosophical ideals, but echoes of her divine example. Even Roman writers and thinkers, encountering her as Minerva, continued the same reverence for intelligence over impulse, for strategy over brute force. Her influence reached the far corners of the Roman world, inspiring not only thinkers, but architects and engineers. The Parthenon's legacy, with its perfect proportions and harmonious design, informed structures for centuries. Temples, courts, and even early libraries bore her mark, a subtle tribute to the goddess who valued thought as much as action. Through stone and marble, she communicated her enduring principle that human ingenuity, guided by reason, could achieve the sublime. In literature, Athena continued to appear as a guiding figure. Poets and playwrights depicted her as a force of counsel, often interceding in critical moments to steer heroes toward clarity and justice. In tragedy and epic alike, she was the reminder that mortal decisions are measured not by strength alone, but by thought, judgment, and foresight. From Homer to later Greek dramatists, her stories carried layers of meaning, teaching generations the balance between intellect and action. During the Renaissance, artists rediscovered her image and purpose. Painters and sculptors portrayed her wisdom and strength, embedding classical ideals into a new age of humanism. Athena's helmeted profile and calm demeanor adorned frescoes, sculptures, and engravings, symbolizing reason triumphing over chaos, the mind over unbridled emotion. Even centuries later, her figure inspired thinkers, architects, and educators, embodying the principle that knowledge, justice, and creativity are inseparable. Her symbols persisted in subtle forms: the owl, representing keen observation; the olive tree, a gift of sustenance and peace; the aegis, the shield of intellect. These emblems traveled through time, becoming motifs not just in art, but in cultural thought, influencing everything from literature to philosophy, from civic institutions to the moral imagination. Yet Athena's legacy is most enduring in the spirit she represents. She reminds humanity that wisdom is active, not passive, that insight is a guide through the chaos of life. That reason, when paired with courage, is a form of strength unmatched by armies or weapons. Her voice, quiet but constant, echoes in every problem solved, every strategy devised, every act of creation and justice. In modern times, her lessons remain surprisingly relevant. From the scholars in libraries to engineers designing bridges, from judges interpreting laws to writers crafting stories, Athena's influence is woven into the fabric of human progress. Her spirit is the quiet force that values intelligence, discipline, and fairness over impulse and force. And as long as humans continue to think, to create, and to seek justice, Athena endures. She is not merely a goddess of a distant past, but a guide in the present, a symbol of the enduring power of wisdom over chaos, of strategy over rage, of mind over matter. In every thoughtful act, in every reasoned choice, the goddess lives on, reminding us that intellect, virtue, and perseverance are the true markers of greatness. And so, in celebrating Athena, we honor not just a figure of myth, but the enduring potential within ourselves, the very spark of wisdom she instilled in humanity long ago. As we slowly draw our journey with Athena to a close, let us take a moment to reflect on the goddess who guided both mortals and heroes with wisdom, courage, and foresight. She is not only the guardian of cities and warriors, but also of our own capacity to think, to create, and to act with purpose. If you have enjoyed exploring the life, myths, and enduring influence of Athena, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel, sharing your thoughts in the comments, perhaps telling us where you are watching from, helps us continue creating these calm, deep explorations of mythology. From her strategic mind to her role as a protector of justice and craft, Athena remains a timeless example of intellect and virtue. And now, as the day wanes and the world quiets, let this story linger gently in your thoughts, a soft companion guiding you toward calm and rest. Close your eyes if you wish, and let the lessons, the myths, and the presence of Athena settle around you. With every heartbeat, feel the tranquility of understanding, the serenity of insight, and the quiet strength of wisdom. Thank you for joining this journey, and may the spirit of Athena, the goddess of reason and courage, accompany you into peaceful sleep.